Ya'ate, hello. Welcome to Real Native Roots, Untold Stories, a podcast by a Native woman with deep roots. Hosted by yours truly, Vicky Katsuli Boy Oldman. I am a lover of stories, a connector, and a holder of wisdom keepers. Each month, we will be connecting with our Native relatives and exploring what medicine our guests share and offer to us. Please join me on this uncharted journey to learn, connect, and reflect. Ahé'hee. Thank you. I know it's been a while. I know. Times like this is when we have to be gentle with ourselves and know that we have to be mindful about our own personal expectations. And I think that's why I'm coming in sheepishly, because I'm like, I know it's been a while. This year has been moving in a place that I don't even recognize. For me, it feels like it's slow, but it's moving fast. I don't know what that's about. And time is quite interesting. I had some learning in the past 3.5 weeks. We went on a trip to Europe, my first ever trip to Europe. I had learned so much. These are the 4 big ones for me that I'm going to share with you all. Talking about time, cadence, and rhythm, that was one of the first things that I learned, and that was slowing down, literally slowing down. When we're going at a certain pace and all of a sudden an environment where the pace is different, you realize how fast you're running. People would go out at 10 in the morning and get coffee and pastries. It was nothing like here in the United States where you're like, I want me some potatoes and Spam and tortillas or pancakes. It was like just coffee. I mean, for the most part, just coffee and maybe a small pastry. And it really made me think about the slowing down. Also, they're eating, like they take their time eating. By the end of the trip, me and my partner were having 2.5 hour dinners. It was so lovely, just sitting by the river and just taking our time eating and just talking and just taking it all in. So slowing down. And I'm going to do my best in 2025 to create more space to enjoy those beautiful moments. The other thing that I learned is less is best. And that's a motto I always live by with work. And when I'm creating an agenda or whatever kind of training I'm doing, I really believe less is best. And being in Europe made me think about less is best in a different way in your home environment. Everything was so small, but very minimalist space. And even the food portions were so small. Even the appliances were tiny. It's just interesting. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it. I'm not going to lie. I like the big bathrooms here in the United States. I couldn't wait to be in my shower, a full-size shower. I felt like I was in the bathroom of an airplane. That's how small I felt like the bathroom was. It makes me appreciate what I have now. Another one is don't overplan. So my guy, he was just kind of like, let's just go with it. He doesn't like, if I was planning this vacation, I probably would have an agenda for the whole 3.5 weeks. No, he's like, yeah, we'll stay here 7 days. Oh, let's just add another day. Like, where are we staying? He's like, oh, don't worry about it. There are plenty of places to stay. And it actually made me appreciate it because we end up staying in some places a day or two longer. And where we thought we wanted to be, we end up staying there much shorter, which was totally fine. So don't overplan, just kind of go with it. Last thing I'll just offer is communication and how important communicating is. I saw it constantly in Europe where people were taking their time drinking coffee and eating, just talking. And even in the streets, at the market, in the airport, people were connecting. Anyway, that was my learning. It was beautiful. I enjoyed. If you follow me on Instagram, I have a little video of one of the beautiful church that I saw. It was just so amazing. If you ever get a chance to go anywhere in another country, I highly encourage that. And just take in the food, the music, the art, the people. I feel like when we get those offerings is when we're truly present and not distracted on our phone or wherever our mind is taking us. That's my update. So let me get the poem ready. Those of you who are new to my podcast, I always like to read poems from people of color. And this one is from Young Pueblo. This is one of his latest books. It's called Lighter. I'm going to read the poem now. We allow ourselves to love because it's worth the risk. Even though there is the chance of loss or hurt, we take the leap again and again. Because love is one of the best parts of being alive. We don't do it because it's easy. We do it because connection makes everything brighter. Oh, that's so beautiful. And I love the verse where I said, where it says, because love is one of the best parts of being alive. And it is. And it's not easy. It's scary sometimes when we really decide to go into space, and it's totally worth it. So that's the poem I wanted to read from Young Pueblo. Now, to introduce our guests, I met this beautiful woman actually here in Albuquerque. We're both speakers for a nonprofit organization that does a lot of work for Indigenous schools, young people, and leaders. And she was speaking before me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta have her on my podcast. She talked a lot about what it takes to heal. And I understood her because I went through my healing journey. She was saying key words. I was like, oh, no one talks about that. It was really interesting. And I was like, I got to have her on here. I want her to talk about her story and share her wisdom with you all, because it moved me enough to want to have her on here. She is an enrolled member with the Muscogee Cree Nation. She also has her own consulting company called Weaving Wisdom. And her goal, her mission, her march in this planet is really to help us become more aware of our truth, of who we are, of our power, and bring voice to ourselves. She's got numerous awards, the Native 40 Under 40, and been speaking for over 10 years to large Fortune 500 companies, to nonprofits, to colleges, to young people. And that is her passion, is really to help young people, to inspire them, because she believes that they're our future. So Willow Blythe Carroll, please bring your voice in this space. I'm so happy you're here. Tell the listeners hello and introduce yourself.
Hashjay. Thank you, Mado Vicky. My name is Willow Blythe Carroll. Hashjay Willow Blythe Carroll Chahojif Garos Muscogee Creek Oedos. Thank you so much for having me and for this beautiful space that we're here. And there is so much beauty in being who we are. There's so much beauty in what you were alluding to with that healing journey and the discovery that we find within ourselves, and how much joy we find when we look within and we find those beautiful facets of ourselves. Just excited to be here. I'm a speaker, I'm a storyteller, I'm a legacy builder, I'm all of the things. And really, at the heart of what I do, I really truly believe in bringing hope and healing to Indigenous and diverse communities. It's what I'm passionate about, and it's what I love.
Yeah, thank you. Tell me what you thought of the poem. How did it speak to you, if at all?
Yes, it was so beautiful. I was actually closing my eyes and really taking it in. It really made me think about self-love and that
Hmm.
healing journey, and how when we take that leap, when we take that risk to love ourselves in that way, to shed old narratives, to step into the truth of who we are, and to be who we are meant to be boldly, that is so transformational. It's so worth it. It comes with risk, it comes with sacrifice, but it is such a beautiful journey. And so when you were sharing that, that is exactly what came to mind, that connection with ourselves and really looking inward and being able to see those parts of ourselves and to continue on that journey of getting to know who we are. That's what really spoke to me in that. And so, just this beautiful journey of self love and how it is such an incredible gift that all of us need and absolutely deserve in this life.
Do you find that people are talking more about that, about healing and self love more so than 10 years ago? Or is it because I have gone through it, so I hear it and see it more?
That is a great question. I feel like when you start that journey of self love and healing, you start putting out a light and you start putting out an aperture that brings in others around you who are also on that journey. And so, maybe as time has evolved, as the years have passed, as we've had turbulent times and life has shifted quite a bit, things have changed, we start realizing what actually matters. And so,
Mhm.
I feel like over time, it's just we've started to look more into what actually matters.
I wondered that. I sometimes think it's just because I understand this, so I see it more and feel it more. It's like when you're pregnant, all of a sudden you see women pregnant everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
really do. The more that I feel like the more I've been on this journey, just for my own my personal side of things, it's you start putting yourself in those spaces and you start attracting those people in your life and those communities in your life. And I feel as you get more and more into the journey, you start building your community in that way. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I know that when I saw you in, do you remember when that was?
Yeah, it was this year. It was earlier. I want to say, was it, yeah, July, maybe July, I
The
think.
summertime. When you were there, I remember hearing you talk a little bit about yourself, and you had shared that you are a woman that was raised by a single mom, and you talking about living in Texas, so living in an urban setting. I would love for you to go backwards and tell us about who your people are, your grandparents, and a little bit about your parents, and where are your people from, and give us a picture of what that looks like back home.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So, originally, I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, that's where my family is from. I have family kind of all over Oklahoma, to be quite honest. And
Mhm.
my story really starts in a place of adversity to some degree. I always say my story is one of adversity, but most importantly, it's one of overcoming. My mother, it was just my mom and I for as long as I can remember. And being an Indigenous woman, my mom, a single parent, and also being a trauma survivor was my upbringing. And so my childhood was really turbulent. And my family moved to Texas pretty quickly after I was born. My childhood was hard. It was really, really challenging and it was difficult. And I knew at the heart of my childhood that I wanted to be successful. I knew that I wanted to be someone and I wanted to make a difference. And I remember thinking that at a very, very young age. As I grew older, I really had this sense of the spirit of resilience in me of I don't want my circumstances to define me. I want to be successful. I want to change the trajectory of where my life is going for my family. And I wanted to be the one in the family that changed the narrative, that broke the cycles, that redefined everything in our culture and heritage. And I worked toward that as I got, older. And, a huge part of why I am where I am today and why I've achieved the success that I have today is because of my roots. And
Mm.
I attribute all of my success to my roots of who I am. Part of my roots, my grandfather, my papa, was a huge inspiration in my life. My grandfather was everything to me, and he was only around for a few years in my life, but he made such an impact in me. And he told me so much about our culture and just how much pride he had in who we are as people. And I just have so many beautiful memories of being in his arms, being on his shoulders, just being in
Mhm.
spirit, and so many beautiful memories that I carry with me in my everyday. And my papa inspired me in so many ways and in his own story, he was incredibly inspirational with Indigenous communities and pouring into them and
Mhm.
helping them be the best versions of themselves. In a sense, I feel that I have taken on that legacy and he has passed that torch to me and I'm doing that in my own way. And it's just beautiful to be where I am. I'm grateful for the space and the safety and all of those things that I have now to be able to do that and to give back to our communities.
Mm. What's a favorite funny story that you can remember being with your grandfather?
Oh, Kristen. Oh, I have a favorite story. Okay, so as a kid, I always, any gathering that we had in the family, like any kind of dinners or anything like that with all my family members, all the aunties, everyone there, I was always on my grandfather's shoulders. That was my thing. And no one could get me off of my grandfather's shoulders. And I was always like playing in his hair. And that was such a thing. And, my cousins would be like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I would just look at them and I'd be on his shoulders playing in his hair. And I'd be like looking at them like, you know, um, and they would make fun of me and they'd say, "Why do you do that? Why do you do that?" It's just a funny, silly memory. And just remember being in community with my family in that way. And that's when time seemed so slow there in a good way. And I had so much fun and I felt so safe and I felt so held and loved on his shoulders. So for as long as I remember, every gathering, my family would be like, "There she is again on his shoulders." And I'm like, "Yep, that's me."
Oh.
So,
And
yeah.
what was grandma like? I'm curious about grandma and grandpa and how they moved with one another.
Yeah, my grandpa was very much a protector in so many ways. And I always felt him just watching over me all the time and carrying me. And that was really his role. And then my grandmother, she was always, the playful, kind of fun one. And if I
Oh.
was ever sick or anything like that, she was always taking care of me and what can I get you? And do you need any food? And I remember her always having amazing food. And she would always cook me big meals and she would always make sure I was fed. And so she was like a nurturer. And I really loved being in space with both of them as a kid and just always felt so safe with them both.
Mm. And that time when I think about seasons, I always like to use seasons for age because I feel like sometimes we're older, but we still feel like we're in our spring season. As you describe remembering your grandfather and being with him and your family, your whole love pod there, when you think about the spring season of your life when you were young, give us a picture of what Willow was like.
I was a storyteller for as long as I can remember. I was a child that was always lost in imagination and lost in fiction. I loved fiction writing.
Mm.
I was the kid that in school, everyone would be out in recess on the playground, and I would be the kid that would ask my teacher, "Can I please just sit in the classroom and write?" That's all I wanted to do. And I have so many vivid memories of that. And I just enjoyed stories so much, and I fell in love with my imagination and being able to bring to life so many beautiful, fictional, fun stories and just getting lost in my imagination in that way. And that part of my story is so vivid because I created so many different things. And so I knew at a young age that I wanted to be a storyteller. I didn't quite have the words yet, of course, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so little me was very creative. Little me was trying to create the most funniest, cliffhanger kind of stories you could think about. And I got older during that time as well. What I'll say is that there was a lot that I was going through as a child, and I had to make the best of my circumstances in those times and in those moments. And so storytelling truly saved my life in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And I was always looking for ways to find the best in my circumstances. I was the kid that was always smiling You would have never known it, what was I was going through or what was behind the scenes, but I always had a smile on my face and I was always making the best of where I was.
Well, as little as we are when we're young, sometimes we don't really know the kind of modalities that have saved us or protected us or kept us sane to some degree to make us escape a little bit in a different way. I just think that's beautiful. At that time, too, you said you moved to Texas, you're still young and leaving family. What was that like for you and your mom? And what did she show you that you still carry and that has helped you to who
Yeah.
you've become?
Yeah, definitely. When we moved to Texas, it was a definitely a cultural shift. It was very different from
Yeah.
our homeland. And I feel like when we made that move and disconnected from our homeland and our family, I felt that. My mom felt that, again, single mom having to figure it out on her own. I think she really truly felt that, and we both did. My mom is hardworking. My mom, at the core of who she is, she loves and she cares, and she wants the best for everyone. Truly, at the core, and at the heart of who she is. I remember as a child, she was working all the time and doing her best to give me what she could, and she did as much as she could to protect me from situations, as much as she could to protect me from what was out there and what was around me. And unfortunately, just with her having to do it on her own, with the lack of resources and those kinds of things that she had at that time, she struggled. So not only were we struggling financially, but she struggled emotionally. And
Right.
it was so hard for her to raise a young girl who didn't have her father around and wanted to, and having to face that as a mother, I'm sure is so challenging for her. And again, she did the best that she could. And I have so much forgiveness and grace in that version of my mom who was trying to raise me alone and trying to figure it out and not having any resources to do it. And so I give her grace for that. And she taught me the perseverance and the hard work, and that no matter the obstacles, you can still persevere. You can still do these things. And I watched her just create miracles. As a child, there were things I'm like,
Aw.
did you do that? How did I have a Christmas? How did I have any of these experiences? And she made miracles out of our circumstances. And so there's a lot of beauty in the challenges that we both faced, but I've learned so much from her, and I've learned so much about myself from that time in my life.
Oh, that's so beautiful. When we watch people, there's learning. I realize, like, yeah, if that situation happens in my timeline, I hope I handle it differently. As you think about your journey and with your consulting company right now, was your consulting company something you always thought that you would be doing, or was there something else that you thought you would be doing?
I always had it in my heart that I wanted to give back. I'm a first generation college graduate, and it honestly, how it started was not something that I manifested. It's something I had in my heart, but the opportunity manifested itself naturally. And I was actually asked to speak to Indigenous students in Dallas. And it was an opportunity, an invitation to share your story and your educational journey. Can you share that with these students? And I was like, me? Are you sure? And they said, yes, we want you to share and just how you did it and what it meant to you. And I'm, okay, I'll do it. And I shared my story, and I'll never forget that moment when that was really my first time on quote unquote stage and standing there and sharing my story. And I thought, gosh, I hope this is going to be meaningful. And I didn't really know or think that it would. In some facet, I was still kind of finding myself in that time in my life. But right after my presentation, I had all these students come up to me and they were so excited. And they said, well, oh my gosh, can you tell me about how did you do this? And you said journalism, tell me about that. And just asking me all these questions. And I was surrounded with so much like curiosity and excitement. And it felt like, yep, I knew right there. I was like, this is what I need to be doing. I need to share back. And students need to hear that their circumstances don't define them, that they can absolutely achieve success with intention and choice. And that moment really was, okay, I want to keep giving back and sharing my story. And so that really kickstarted this sharing my story and being invited into spaces and rooms to help others be the best versions of themselves. And that's how it started for many years. And so I did it for years and years. And then other times in my life, I was in corporate communications and marketing. I was all over an industry throughout my career. But at the core of those different jobs that I had, I was always making it a priority to share my story, a priority to give back and make sure that others had what they needed to be successful. And so that's how it started. And then over time, I thought, you know what? I know this is in my heart what I'm supposed to be doing. And then that led me to founding Weaving Wisdom and helping and inspiring leaders and youth and helping them be the best versions of themselves. And so it naturally and kind of organically unfolded, which is beautiful. I love that life can be that way. And I'm grateful to be where I am and in the space to do that today.
So the work that you do, what do you find is the biggest fear or the struggles that folks have to move to the next level?
I would say the fear of being seen. I really feel at the heart of what I see emerging and established leaders struggle with is that fear of being seen in space. Does my story matter? And should I speak up? Those kinds of false narratives and false truths that can sometimes get intermingled in that, and that holds them back, stepping into who they are or becoming the best leader they're meant to be because they're concerned about this concept of being seen. And it's very vulnerable to be seen. And so that, in essence, is vulnerability. And vulnerability can feel very risky. And oftentimes I see it so many times, it's like, well, it's better to just keep everything inside. And what I always share with anyone I'm in the room with is that your voice matters. And it's okay to be scared and to still do it because what you have to say matters. What you have to share is truth and it deserves to be heard. And so I really try to come from that standpoint of that it's important to put yourself out there. It's important to find yourself in that and to step through that. And it can be tough. There's a lot of unlearning that we have to do in that. There's a lot of confronting, well, where is that coming from? And why do I have these barriers that I'm imposing on myself that are coming up and telling me I can't do something or I'm not worthy or I'm not enough or whatever it is that's coming up as these barriers? You have to confront those things. And that can be hard because that is healing. We get into healing and it's kind of goes back to the poem that you shared earlier at the very beginning of this is it really is that self-love and it's that healing. And we have to take the risk we have to be vulnerable. We have to take the risk and we have to confront those narratives. We have to confront those parts of ourselves because that's healing and it matters. We deserve it. And it's a part of what we need as people.
What really causes that? Is it the people we know?
I feel like it's picked up in so many different realms. And some of them you mentioned, definitely childhood is a very vulnerable space where we pick up a lot of messages at a very early age that get inherited into our brains sometimes and can really be embedded in a way that makes us see the world a certain way or to have a perspective. So I think some of that comes definitely from childhood experiences. I also believe generational trauma is a part of that as well. And sometimes fears and experiences, even things that we didn't experience, our ancestors or others before us, fears that have manifested from their struggles, I feel can carry with us. And so childhood, generational trauma, of course, experiences that we have growing up and have attributed truths from them, even though they were hard. I think it can really come from all realms. We have to go back and we have to confront those things. And we have to be curious about, well, where are they coming from? Why is this a pattern for me? Why is this truth and this message a pattern? And going back to the root of it, because the root of it can be in so many different ways. And when we know the root of it and we take the time to heal and release, then we can start taking in the truth. We can take in those positive things that we know to be true about ourselves.
What would be some examples of letting go and releasing?
I would say one way that we can release those things is through ceremony with self and really taking intentional time to think through what are those self imposed narratives that I'm telling myself that I know are not my truth? What are those things? And naming them and being able to be curious about where did this come from? Why is this something that I'm holding that is not mine that I don't have to hold anymore? And taking that, again, that intentional time to think through those parts of ourselves that limit us, those parts of ourselves that hold us. Ceremony looks different and unique for everyone. For me, it can be burning something to signify or symbolize that it is gone. It is now with the earth. It is no longer with me. And there's a number of ways which we can release that in that way, but also it's a journey of healing. It's certainly a process and it's something that has to be revisited time and time again. And I have found in my own experiences that, when I have those narratives that come back up that I know that are not my truth, and they keep coming up again, I know, okay, I still have healing to do around that. We have to realize that as time goes on, those narratives that we are telling ourselves will change over time. And we have an opportunity as we keep healing to keep confronting it over and over again. And over time, it loses its power and to the point where it eventually releases. And so it looks different for everyone, but healing is a huge part of that. And that's an ongoing journey.
Yes, I feel like healing work is lifelong. I really do. I really feel like it's
Yeah.
lifelong. And I'm also very happy that you mentioned ceremony. And as I was listening to you, it reminds me of most ceremonies in my culture is like year round. They're depending on the year and the season and what's happening. But it was important for everyone to have certain ceremonies for themselves. They had different names and they understood that was a part of helping like our brain being in that space of listening and hearing the prayers and knowing like when we're doing that, we're releasing and it's almost like a renewal. They knew all of that before brain science and parts were things that we have different language for. They knew that all along through songs and through prayers and even like connection with the earth and connection with the animals. And that made me curious about you and your connection with animals. I know that you have the love with horses.
Yeah. Horses are incredibly healing animals. And as you said, our ancestors had so much wisdom about nature and just how much connection and growth and lessons that we can learn from being in nature and especially with animals. And horses have been a part of my story for quite a long time. I actually, when I was a kid, when I was younger, I loved horses and wanted to be around them. I studied horses as a kid. I would always buy books to study them and draw them and learn them. And so I naturally had this attraction toward getting to know them. And at that time, I didn't have the opportunity to really be around horses too much when I was younger. I did in some ways. But as I got older, I was like, there was this pull in tune with them. And I knew that that was with me since I was really, really young. And so now I'm an equestrian. So I ride horses. I have been riding for, I guess, as an adult for now probably, gosh, maybe 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
And that has been a huge part of my healing journey. That has been such an incredible transformation in my life since I made the decision to ride again as an adult. Horses reflect how we feel, and it's really, really interesting when you're around them because they pick up on our heartbeats. They can sense our heartbeats from several feet away. They can pick up because they are prey animals. They can pick up so much when we are in space with them. And so when I'm working with horses, when I'm riding them, when I'm around them, they are basically like a mirror in our emotions and who we
Wow.
are. And they can teach us so much. And sometimes I will go and ride and I'll be around a horse and let's say I'm having a stressed out day or I'm frustrated and I'll go and I'll ride. And that day, maybe the horse I'm riding on is super stubborn and doesn't want to do what I'm asking them to do and going left when I want them to go right. And, this resistance and push and pull that happens. And I realize, oh, this is because that's what's going on internally. The horse is reflecting what I am feeling right now. And until I can learn to work through that and process that, this is going to be my ride. This is going to be what I'm going to feel. This is going to be my path. And so over time, what I've learned in working with horses is that I have to process and confront my feelings, and horses have taught me how to do that. So if it's through anger or frustration, they show me how to work through those things. If I'm coming from a place of sadness or grief or something in that kind of realm, they will slow down and they'll be a little bit more, less rigorous. And it's something that's really hard to put into words, but I have learned so much just being in nature with them and learning from them and myself, and so many takeaways that have helped me grow in my healing journey and have helped me be truthful and to honor where I am in my space and to recognize what's going on emotionally. There's a lot of mind and body connection all the way. So, yeah, that's a really interesting part of my story for sure.
My dad loves horses. He has a little ranch of horses there on the res. And when I was in the midst of being in my darkest time, I remember there's one horse, which is my dad's favorite horse. He would never come to me. Like I would call him and try to tell him to come here so I could pet him. And he'd just look at me and walk away. Like, and there was a time where I felt like I was on my knees of just like, I was just in a really hard place. And I went to the horse corral early in the morning and I just remember putting my arms on the log and then he came up to me and he let me pet him and then I just started crying, getting emotional about that moment. I understand why my dad loves being around them. He protects them like they're his children. So thank you for sharing and educating us about horses and the medicine that they bring to us.
Yes, they are very sacred animals, that's for sure.
Mm. Well, as you're entering into your early fall stage of life, what do you feel that you're still learning about yourself?
That's a good question. I'm thinking. I am still learning that I'm healing and that my healing journey is going to be lifelong. And what's important about that is that oh, sorry, I'm kind of a little emotional. Sorry. I'm still on this journey of healing and really rediscovering myself in new ways and having to step into courage and having to continue to shed fears in my life. And I think sometimes with healing, when we have things come up again, we're like, oh, I thought we worked through this, I thought this was released entirely, or I thought this was over. And I am learning that it's okay for those things to come back up. There's a reason it's come back up, and
Mm.
to give myself grace in that and to take the time to understand it in a different way. And so I'm really learning to continue to heal, to continue to give myself grace, and also realize that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to take time for myself to really kind of look within and find, what do I need in this moment? What do I need in this season of my life? And what do I need to move forward? And so it's definitely an interesting season for me right now. I am feeling this intuitive instinctual feeling that things are going to shift dramatically for me. And I don't know what that means yet. And I am trying to figure those things out. But it feels like there's going to be a dramatic shift and it feels almost like a leap and a jump. And I'm excited for what that looks like or what that's going to look like. At the same time, I'm like, oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I'm excited about it. Yeah.
I love all of that. Thank you for sharing and being in a vulnerable place because sometimes we don't know. And that's a hard question too to really sit with. Like, what am I still learning about, right? About myself. It made me think about your theme song. I asked you, what's your theme song of the year? How did this song find you? And tell people about the song.
Yeah. So the song is I Am Light by India Ari Simpson. And this song was actually gifted to me by a friend who
Oh,
was going through a really tough time and really difficult, hard time and a lot of grief. And someone gifted this song to me and said, I want you to listen to it. And I think it might sit with you. And I never heard it before. And I went home and I was having such a I remember when I first listened to it, I was having such a hard day and I played it and it was so beautiful. And, the song just says so many beautiful, positive affirmations. I am light. And it, I mean, I remember just like breaking down when I heard it. And it was a reminder that even in my darkest moments, I am light. And that's what that song was for me. And I've held on to that since then. And so when I have those moments where I need to remind myself of that truth, that's the song that I go to. It's so beautiful and it's such a gift. So I recommend anyone listen to it.
yes, you have to. I listened to it a couple times before we got on and it just made my heart melt. It made me think about this other song. I was on a Zoom meeting and we came on and it was playing and I love it. It's called A Freedom Song by Monica McIntyre.
Oh,
I think you would appreciate it. So I'm put it in the link there. You can check it out later on.
yeah. Okay.
Music, again, talking about like our people, our ancestors, music is a form of healing, right? And there's songs that are prayer songs that are for healing. And for this, the song that inspired you is doing that. It's healing. It also made me think about early on when you were telling a little bit about your spring and some of your summer stories, retelling some of these stories or maybe stories for the first time. What's that doing for you now?
It is part of that healing journey for me. It is stepping into my power and who I am. And again, that vulnerability. I really feel like I'm continuing to kind of push myself to share those things because I know that when I share those parts of my story, those vulnerable parts, the hard parts, even the, exciting parts, I know that someone needs to hear that somewhere. Someone needs to take away something from it. And so it's a beautiful part of my healing journey to give medicine to someone else who may need to hear what I've gone through so they can see themselves as well in that story. And so, yeah, I would say that.
Mhm. Thank you.
Mm.
So I always like to ask guests one of the questions at the end is, because we have listeners from all over internationally and here in the States, native, non native. There's one thing that you really would love for them to explore, maybe be curious about, or do. What would that be? What do you want to tell them?
I would say get to know the version of yourself that you've always wanted to be and know that you are today. And what that means is that all of us hold truth in who we are. And it's so important for us to get to know that version of ourselves, to have the courage, to have the vulnerability, to explore that version of ourselves, and to take the time to get to know who we are, to get to know a version of ourselves that we know to be true about ourselves. Because I think oftentimes we can create limitations. We can create things around us that are not really who we are, or we can get caught up in culture sometimes, or the things around us, and create a version of ourselves that's not really who we are. And it can be so exhausting to carry a mask and to be a version of ourselves that's on us. And so my advice, my guidance, my wisdom would be get to know the real version of you
Mm.
and give yourself that medicine and feed that version of you. So connect with that part of you and build that, because stepping into your truth every single day is going to transform your life. And that is medicine that I would recommend to anyone, is get to know the truth of who you are. That is going to change your life in so many ways.
Mm. Thank you so much. I have 5 more questions. These are wrap-up questions, but they're, like, meant to be, like, rapid, but sometimes they're not good. I remember I had a guest, I had asked the question, and he's like, "That is not rapid, that's deep."
We're
I
asking
don't
beautiful, deep questions, by the way. I'm like, oh
Oh.
my goodness, I love them. Love them.
Alright, this is the first question. What mythical creature did you believe was real when you were little?
Mermaids.
Maybe you
I
still do. Yeah. Yeah.
I was a huge believer in mermaids. I thought they were incredibly beautiful, and there is a deeper connection with water that has always been a part of me. And so naturally, as a child, I was like, I love mermaids. They're incredible. They're in water, and just in my language, Wiwa, water is such a beautiful nurturer of who we are as people, and a huge part of the land. And so I love mermaids. I always did as a kid. I used to draw them all the time. I would always think too that I could see them. And so my
Oh.
mom, funny enough, when we would go visit up in Oklahoma and we would go out to the lakes out there, because my family loved going to the lakes in Oklahoma, I would always be very adamant about, okay, I'm going to look for mermaids. I know they're going to be out there. Of course, my family's like, okay, yeah, yeah, you do that. Here's your binoculars. You go get lost somewhere. Uh, but I was always looking for them, and I was very like, they have to be here somewhere. And there's just so much magic and fun in that. And I always just thought that they had the most incredible life ever, being able to be in tune with all the animals and all the things. I always thought they were so fun. So
So, clearly, I know you watched the movie Ariel.
yes. Oh yes, definitely. Yes.
Heartbeat Ariel.
Yeah.
My second question is, what object do you misplace or lose the most?
Oh, I feel like it depends. Okay. I'll have to say my phone. And funny enough, I bring my phone with me everywhere, but all the time it's always missing. It's just, I set it down in my head, then it's gone. And I'm like, I know I just had it. I had it 5 seconds ago. And I do it all the time in my house. I do it when I'm out. I mean, it'll be right in front of me on my lap. And I'm like, where's my phone? Where is it? And it's right there. So I feel like for some reason it's my phone. So I don't know. That just seems to be the thing that comes up when I think about it.
What movie, book, or TV show changed your life?
Oh, oh, that's a deep question. I had to think about that. Okay. I have to narrow it down now. Okay. So I would say one of the books, because I'm a big book reader, one of the books that I read during my high school leading into college years, I think it's called Habits. Is it Seven Habits of Highly
Mhm.
Successful People by Stephen Covey?
Yeah,
Is it
I
that
think it's
one?
effective. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that book. That was a book that was gifted to me, and I read that in my high school years, and I read it, every day, and I always had it with me. I had it in my bag, and I studied it and learned so much from it. And, funny enough, even in college, I brought it with me, and I would always, take, notes in it, and something I would hear, and I'm like, "Ooh," and I'd go back to my book and I'd write it. And that was one of those that I just remember being a very big eye opener when I was really
Mhm.
trying to rediscover myself and to really be intentional about, bringing success in my life and how to change my life. That was one of those gifts that someone gave me that really meant something to me, and I carried it for a number of years.
All right. The next one is, what is the kindest thing someone ever did for you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a good one. Ever. I mean, that's a strong word. I'm like, ever. The most. Okay, I know the answer to this. It came to me. I would say during the time that my grandfather, my papa, was on this earth, and he was so oh gosh, I'm getting emotional, sorry. Oh, he made sure that during his time on earth that he got me enrolled in our tribe and wanted to make sure that at a young age I knew where I came from, I knew who my people were, and that our tribe would take care of me. And I feel like that was the most kind, beautiful gift that he gave to me, enrolling me in the tribe. And that was his gift. After, of course, he left and passed away. I feel like he gave that gift to me of, I want you to know who our people are. I want you to know who you are. And I want you to know that you're always going to be protected by our people. And that's a gift that as I got older, and being connected with my tribe really helped me come back to the roots of who I was and getting to know my culture, getting to know my language. Started learning my language in these last couple of years. And all of those things were because he wanted me to know and made the effort to have that connection, even from when I was that young to now. And so that's something that has just been a beautiful gift, and returning to my roots and knowing that he is with me in spirit, that my people are with me in spirit, that my ancestors are with me. That's what that means to me. And so
Mm,
it's beautiful when thinking about it.
mm, I love it. I wanted to give you heart emojis. All
Thank you.
right. My last one. Do you believe in second chances?
Yes, absolutely. I believe in as many chances as it takes, quite honestly. I feel like we have to give ourselves so much grace in this life. And there are so many opportunities for us to change and for us to be different versions of ourselves. And as life happens, as seasons change, as life transitions, we can make changes to become better, stronger versions of who we are. And second chances to me mean rediscovery, it means redefining. And I feel everyone is entitled for opportunities to try again and as many times as it takes. And for me, it could be, a second chance. For someone else, it may be more than that. But I believe in giving grace. I believe in forgiveness. I believe in those things that help us become the best versions of ourselves. And everyone deserves that part in their story.
So beautiful. Really is. I'm glad I landed that question at the end because I think we all need to hear that. I feel like even as reflective of ourselves. Okay, tomorrow's another day. I appreciated my time with you and so thankful to Universe. I appreciate hearing untold stories that you shared with us. And you all heard from Willow about discovering yourself and being gentle and doing the healing work. It's hard work, it's lifelong work to reconnect with your roots and your culture. That is part of the healing and finding that, telling your story and retelling stories also is a form of healing because we tend to unpack things and to unlearn and confront those patterns that show up
Mm.
and to give yourself a second chance or more. Thank you so much, Willow. I appreciate everything about you, and I look forward to following you on Instagram and just seeing what the next chapter unfolds and how it unfolds.
Yes, Mado, thank you so much, Vicky. This is a beautiful space. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you.